Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Weather with Sim forecast. And in today's forecast, we are going to be talking about an interesting weather pattern that's going to be coming to the United States over the next couple of weeks. And this is going to be bringing some pretty big impacts, as not only could this weather pattern bring the potential for more severe weather as we get into April, as April is usually one of the most active months of the season, which we will watch really closely by the time we enter the month of April. But this weather pattern could also bring the potential for more heavy snowfall, and we might even need to watch for higher winds too as well with some of these storms. So we will need to watch this very closely over the next couple of weeks. But let's first start off by what's happening today and even the next few days. And you guys can see that right now we are dealing with some scare showers and even some thunderstorms down here along the Gulf Coast. Now, keep in mind that some of these will have the potential to become severe, as the latest from the Storm Prediction Center does have a marginal level 1 out of 5 threat for a few isolated severe storms down here along the Gulf Coast. Main concerns for today will be the potential for some isolated damaging winds and maybe even an isolated tornado or two, which we will keep an eye on it very closely, but keep in mind that it's a lower end threat, so we're not expecting anything crazy with this system, despite seeing some widespread severe weather yesterday, which we will need to watch very closely. But it's once again not really something we really need to complain about, as chances of severe weather as of right now are really low. But look what happens as we get into tomorrow. We don't really see any severe weather at all, and then we actually do have an atmospheric river event rolling on into the Pacific Northwest, which could bring some isolated severe storms by the time we get into our Wednesday. But keep in mind, guys, that this is also kind of uncertain too, and it's also kind of rare to see severe storms over there in the Pacific Northwest. So if I were you, I probably wouldn't complain too much about the threat either if you live up here in the Northwest. But still, you gotta be paying attention, as there is still the potential to see some isolated severe storms here and there. But other than that, I'm not really expecting anything crazy over here in the Pacific Northwest by the time we get into our Wednesday. Let's now talk about what we could see as we get into the future, because as of right now, we still got some pretty high energy values down here along the Gulf Coast. It's just the wind shear that's really limiting the energy as of right now, and you guys can see that for right now, there's not nearly as much energy as what we had yesterday to work with. But look what happens when we take this forward. By the time we get into the end of March, we could be seeing a pretty big severe weather event. The first round could be across parts there of the Midwest, and as well as the Central Plains, mainly across this area right here will be the area to keep an eye on closely, as we'll be seeing one surge of energy roll on through, and then after that we get another big surge of energy, which will still result in some severe weather as far north as the Great Lakes regions, and that energy could head as far east as even parts there of New England, bringing chances for isolated severe storms even by the time we get into the very last day of March, which will be next Monday. And then we even see a bigger severe weather event roll on through with even more energy to work with. This is wow, guys. Look at that. Down there in Texas, over 5,000 joules per kilogram, guys. We're talking unstable air masses. This is crazy, guys. One of the most highest amounts of energy I've seen on the mall so far this year. And look at that. It doesn't even stop. Look at that. It just continues. So we will need to watch it very closely as we get into April, as I am expecting widespread tornado outbreaks as we get into April. But keep in mind, guys, that things can still always change. It's not like we're going to see a record-breaking tornado outbreak or anything like that, but we will definitely see the potential for several tornado outbreaks, especially if things like this continue to show on the models. The day that I'm most concerned about is April 3rd, where we're going to have that energy even as high as 3,000, guys. 3,000 joules per kilogram as far north as the Midwest and Ohio Valley, with a lot of moisture to work with. You guys can see that dew points could even be in the 70s as far north as Illinois. And then for wind shear, we will have some pretty good wind shear to work with this system. Not a lot, but definitely some to work with, as you can see, especially in the lower levels. So that's a sign that this could definitely be a major tornado outbreak, especially if things come together. But once again, things can still change. So if I were you, I'd probably take this with a grain of salt for right now. But once we get a little bit closer to April, this is when we really got to be paying attention to it very closely. And then if we compare that to the GFS model does show similar things where we could be seeing very high amounts of energy down there across Dixie Alley and as well as a certain plain. Just doesn't show it nearly as widespread compared to the European model, but this is still something to watch for, as severe weather could still unfold as far north as the Lower Ohio Valley. And then after that heads out, we still could be seeing some pretty big events, like I said, as even 1,000 joules per kilogram is still enough to bring widespread severe weather, especially if you have enough wind shear and moisture to work with. And then after that heads out, does not show anything crazy other than what I just was showing you guys, so it doesn't really look as concerning with the GFS model, but it's still at the point to where we need to watch this storm very closely, as I am still expecting the potential for some pretty big outbreaks as we get into April. But once again, things can still change, so I wouldn't be super concerned about it just yet, but still something to really keep an eye on closely, as it is going to be a very active month. Let's now talk about the wind gusts. Will we see wind gusts with some of these storm systems, which I am really concerned about, by the way. Latest on the GFS model for wind gusts does show some pretty strong winds. Not like super strong winds, but does show areas of strong winds gusting between 40 to 50 miles per hour across parts there of the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes region. But I think the bigger winds that we may see probably won't come till we get to April, especially across the Central Plains. Now, the good news is that it doesn't look like we're going to see nearly as high wind gusts as what, we saw over the past few weeks, but still something to keep an eye on closely, as I am still anticipating some severe weather, so something to really keep an eye on closely, as some winds could potentially gust as high as 50 miles per hour. If we compare that to the European model also shows something similar, maybe a little higher wind gusts. We'll have to see how both models look like, but definitely shows a little bit less wind than what we have been dealing with, which once again, it's good news that we are seeing this on the models. But once again, winds can still gust as high as 40 miles per hour with some of these systems, so we will still keep an eye on it very closely. And even if we don't see wind gusts this high, we will likely see wind gusts this high from thunderstorms that develop, especially if we still have the ingredients in place. So we will keep an eye on it very closely, as even the rainfall is going to be pretty high as well. You guys can see that as we take this forward into April, very high rainfall amounts will be likely across the Great Lakes region, which could lead to some flooding. And then for snowfall totals, we could also see some pretty high snowfall totals as well, especially across the extreme northern part of the United States, and maybe even some snowfall still materializing over here across the western United States. So if I were you, I would still be ready for some winter weather, as winter is not 100% over yet, but I would probably say about 90% over, as everyone south of Wisconsin is not currently seeing snowfall as of right now. But thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed today's forecast. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, as we will continue to keep you guys up to date with the latest. And I do apologize for not being able to do a video today. I may still sound a little bit sick since I was a little nasty yesterday with a sore throat, but still consider subscribing to the channel as it really does help out a lot. And of course, make sure to hit that like button down below as well, especially if you find it safe and informative. And also make sure to share this with any friends, family, or anyone you know on social media. Once again, not only does that really help support the channel a lot, but I really do appreciate it. And you guys can also buy Weather with Sim merchandise down below by clicking the link down below in the description. And I hope you guys all have a great rest of your Monday out there, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Thank you all so much for watching, and goodbye.